What's a small act of kindness you were once shown, that you'll never forget? Sometimes the hero is the one who asks. A friend of mine has a son who was dating a girl with a really bad home life. She broke down at their house once because she started her period and couldn't afford tampons that month. My friend found out she only had one pair of shoes that were falling apart, one pair of jeans she wore every day, and a few hoodies. The girl was my size, so I passed down a few pairs of Nike shoes I'd never worn, a couple of Lush bath bombs and gift cards to Belk and JCPenney. My friend took her to the mall, said she only bought underwear and bras since she barely had any that fit. It meant nothing to me since it was all stuff I had around my house, but everything to that girl. There were about 6 of us that dropped off stuff for the girl, who said it was more than she'd ever owned in her life. When I pick up my students, I try to get them to walk fast so we don't waste time. It's elementary school, so usually the students are more than willing to power walk/run in the hallway to my classroom. One day I picked up the student who had just moved to the city. Asked her typical questions. She didn't want to go to PE. Kind of weird but not uncommon. A couple of the other students I had started running to the room and I start to keep up, just a power walk for my adult legs. The new student is falling behind, so I pause and wait. I ask why she doesn't want to run with us and she says her feet hurt. I ask her why and she says her shoes are too small but her mom can't afford new ones. I think it took everything in me to not lose it immediately. We finish our group and before she leaves I ask her what size she wears and if it would be okay if I could find her some shoes that fit better. Without hesitation she says, "That'd be great." She left and I completely broke down. I was biting my lip so I wouldn't sob and I wrote down on a notepad what happened. I gave it to a coworker who comforted me, then ran home and brought back a bag full of shoes that should fit. The student had her pick of several pair. Needless to say, she did like PE after all. So, there was this one time in the 1990s. I was helping my brother move from a teaching job after college. This was in the middle of nowhere in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. He was driving his little pickup truck pulling a trailer and I was driving my crappy little Ford station wagon, packed to the gills with his stuff. It was a Sunday. I'm driving along and my car just dies. No warning, nothing. I coast to a stop on the side of a rural highway and wait for my brother to realize I wasn't behind him anymore and turn around. After about 20 minutes, he finds me, the hood up, and neither one of us knows very much about cars. Soon, though, a man from the house we broke down in front of comes out, takes one look at the engine and says, "Timing belt." We inquire about getting the car towed the 30 miles to the closest large town and realize that it was going to be an expensive repair, even if the engine was okay and not ruined. This man, though, he takes on look at the situation, sees 2 broke kids in their early 20s just trying to get by in life, and he says, "Well, it's Sunday. Nothing's gonna be open. I tell ya what. My next door neighbor is a mechanic. Let's push the car down to my driveway and we'll see what we can do." So that is exactly what we do. His neighbor calls his buddy at the auto parts store, which is closed on a Sunday, who does a favor and gets the parts needed, drives them 30 miles out to the house, and sit around telling stories while the car gets fixed. This man's son, a kid of about 9 or 10, is hanging around. He is extremely bored. There were no kids nearby his age, and he's craving any kind of interaction, even with 2 guys in their 20s. The kid goes, "Want to see my treehouse?" and points to the woods out back. My brother and I look at each other, shrug, and say, "Sure." I've posted this before, but I had finally decided to get out of my abusive home. I went to my college's financial aid office to see if I could qualify for a dorm. I was $50 short. I remember looking at the ground trying not to cry. I had finally gotten the courage up to leave and I still couldn't do it. The financial aid lady touched my shoulder, looked me in the eyes and said, "I believe you." It was the first time anyone had flat out said they believed I was being abused. She took out her own credit card and paid the last $50. She went with me to sign the lease and to get the key to my dorm. I stood with the key in my hand and realized I was getting out. I was going to be free. I broke down. She hugged me and told me to pay it forward eventually. I have no idea what her name is, but to the woman at Dixie College who took a chance on me, thank you. I pay it forward by speaking at therapy groups about how to choose not to be a victim and by sponsoring those who are in similar living situations as I was. Edit. Wow, I will try and answer all your questions individually, but I miss you. Here are the answers to the most popular ones. First and foremost, if you're being abused, tell someone. If they don't believe you, go to the next person, go until you find someone who believes you. It took 22 people before I found someone who believed me. If the person you want to tell is me, that's fine, but tell someone. There is power in speaking your truth. Second, only because I no longer live there I will say that yes, this was in St. George, Utah. I no longer live there because while I did get out that day, my abuse wasn't suddenly over. I moved far enough away that I felt safe and started from the ground up. I was in a very abusive relationship at 19 that I wasn't fully aware of at the time, and living with the guy. I'm at work and realize I don't have any money for food and was just asked by management to stay late, so I called my BF and told him I had an unopened check waiting for me at home and asked if he would bring it to me at work so I could cash it and get some food on my break. He was unemployed at the time, so it didn't seem like a big deal to me, but he said he was out with friends, drunk at a bar, and wouldn't leave, so I would just have to figure it out. This was before Venmo and Cash apps, so I couldn't ask him to send me money either. I was so frustrated and complaining to coworker about what a jerk he was, and a woman overheard my story and offered to buy my lunch. I pleaded with her not to give me any money because I didn't want to sound like I was scamming or anything. It also happened to be Mother's Day and she insisted that as a mother she wouldn't want her kids to go hungry, so she couldn't bear to see another kid in that position with no one to help. It was only $10, but I still hid in the bathroom and cried. I don't have a mom, so it was pretty overwhelming at the time. I moved from Florida to Milwaukee in a U-Haul with everything. Arrived pretty late and wanted at least a mattress to lay on. My girlfriend and son were behind and they were going to be exhausted as it was already nearly 10 p.m. I grabbed a couple boxes close to door and ran them inside. My next trip there were about 4 or 5 guys, early to mid-20s, walking up the street towards me. Growing up in Florida, spy day sense was tingling, but I was a man on a mission, so I ran the next load in so I had presence by my stuff. I am a fairly large, intimidating guy, so I figured if I was by my stuff, they would walk on by. I went back out and posted up in the truck, and the dudes just walked straight up my ramp into my stuff. Experience kicked in and I puffed up ready to swing when the big one in front asked, "Is it all going inside?" Thoroughly confused, I nodded yes, and in 30 minutes these total strangers had all my stuff inside and my bed set up. On the way out they said bye. I offered some payment or really offered anything, but they were walking home from dinner, didn't want cash, almost seemed surprised. Any offer. 3 years in that place, never saw them again, but really drove home that Florida blows monkeys, and not in a good way. When I was 26, broke, living on my own, and developed a reaction to latex and non-latex condoms. Still don't know why. Anyway, I decided to get the implant birth control and went to the family planning clinic. I was filling out the forms where you input your salary and insurance info. I didn't have insurance, and once the medical assistant looked over my form, she realizes my income was $200/year over the limit where they provide full coverage assistance, meaning I wasn't eligible for their financial assistance and was going to have to pay about $1,000 out of pocket just for the birth control, not including an exam I needed. She very quietly explained this to me and then in her normal voice said, "Oh, let me get you a new form, wink wink." She gave me a blank one so I could refill it out and list my income at what they considered to be the limit for assistance. Because of this, I was able to get the physical exam I needed badly, including medication and a 3-year birth control implant for free. I was living paycheck to paycheck, barely scraping by, working full-time and overtime, wearing worn-out clothes and shoes with holes. That woman was a freaking lifesaver for me. When I was working at a vet hospital as an assistant, one day, when I was opening up, before any doctors were present, a woman was frantically knocking at the door with her cat. He was pretty old and looked in rough shape. She was very concerned as he came home from being outside coughing and vomiting. He was stable, so I made comfortable arrangements for him and reassured her until the doctor came. Her cat ended up being diagnosed with asthma and did well. Every time she came in to get food or meds after that, she was always very nice and friendly with me. I got to know her a bit. Her and her husband have 3 elderly cats and run an insurance company together. We would chat whenever she came in. One day we were chatting and she asked if I was excited for the upcoming Christmas holidays. I made a comment about how I wasn't really, because holidays are stressful with the added pressure of gift buying on top of paying rent, etc., but that I was looking forward to time off. A few days later I was eating lunch in the break room, and my coworker dropped off a card. I asked who it was from. She wasn't sure but said it was a client and she had asked the card be given to me. I rushed to the front to see if she was still there, but she had left. It was a card from the woman with a note about how she wished me happy holidays and appreciated me being there when she was stressed, and $300. I nearly cried. I never expected this kindness from an acquaintance, and it came at a time when I was struggling financially, and really did help me out. The next time I saw her, thanked her profusely but insisted she take it back as we're not supposed to accept tips, but she refused and said it was a gift and she was happy to help. Living on my own for the first time in San Antonio, TX, several states away from family. Made stupid missteps like most do their first time on their own, spent a bit too much, forgot to balance certain costs, didn't think things were that expensive, etc. I was already living paycheck to paycheck, but comfortably enough. 4 months in a row, however, due to reduced hours, I got all needed bills covered with only $10 to $40 left for food and gas. I was too proud to get on assistance and felt like I would be a failure if I did. Got over that since. Only had a bare basic internet plan and phone with an unlimited texting plan. 2002-03, smartphones were only just starting to be a thing, and mine wasn't one. I went to the store thinking I had $60 and would treat myself to stocking up on a few pieces of meat to throw in the freezer for future use. I was so damn sick of mac and cheese, hot dogs, eggs, and ramen. Was super careful with pricing and taxes. Got to the register and my card was declined. I stepped aside, long line behind me, and called my bank. I was negative $4.36. I was trying not to cry as I told the cashier I was sorry, but I had to put it back. The lady at the register at the time said "Nuh-uh. Gimme," and grabbed the hand basket for me. She added it onto her order, ignoring my protests. Like, she literally full-blown ignored me until we were walking out of the store. Poor cashier kept looking between us like what's happening, but run it up at the woman's insistence. "Honey, I've been there. You need to eat and be strong to work at pulling yourself up. Someone did this for me once, so I'm doing it for you. All I ask is that you pay it forward, even if it takes years. Oh my God, hun, stop crying. You're a strong, powerful, beautiful woman. Don't ever forget that or let the world forget it. No, seriously, stop crying, it's getting embarrassing." When I first moved to Portland last year, I was super broke, had just enough money to pay for my bills, and my clumsy self dropped my phone face down on the ground so it completely didn't work. I could call people using voice recognition, but even that stopped working after a couple days. I thought it was just an issue with the screen, so I took it to the Apple store for a screen replacement, and they told me it got water damaged on the inside somehow and I would need a whole new phone, which was double the cost of a screen replacement, and I totally could not afford it. I spent the next half hour just bawling, walking around downtown trying to figure something out. I was 19 at the time with no friends or family in the town, not to mention I had no idea where I was going cause I just moved. I was so lost and I felt like such an idiot for breaking my phone, and I didn't want to have to borrow money from my family or friends for a new one cause everyone already doubted my idea to move on my own in the first place. This lady stopped me and asked what was wrong cause I was clearly distraught. I told her in short what has just happened, not expecting anything to come of it, but it was nice to have someone to talk to. She told me her husband had just upgraded his phone and they had a spare iPhone at the house, and to meet her at Starbucks the next day to give it to me. She gave me her business card so I could email her, and she did in fact meet me at Starbucks and give me an old iPhone for completely free, and I have never been more grateful, and I hope I can repay the favor to her or do something similar for someone else when I'm in a better position in my life. I really don't know what I would have done if I hadn't ran into her. This was around a time in high school when I started to get intense social anxiety. Tunnel vision, stuttering, embarrassment, always self-conscious and closed off. When in a room of people, I would freeze up even when no one was paying attention to me. Well, one of my classes always impacted my anxiety far more than the others for some reason. I didn't have friends in that class and most of the other students were jocks or popular kids, so it was hella intimidating. One day the English teacher for the class put us all in a circle and students would ask for each other's opinions. I eventually got called on, and I tried to pull out any tiny bit of improv in me to answer the question as quickly as possible. However, most of it came out as a jumbled and stuttering mess. My face was undoubtedly red and I remember avoiding eye contact as best as I could, cause all I could really hear was my heart pounding. I had already forgotten the question, yet all eyes were on me, watching me struggle. I ended the answer probably just blurting out how I don't know how to answer the question. I can't even remember how everyone else reacted. I think some jocks were teasing me, but I think the guy who had asked the question actually noticed that I was having a panic attack and not just having stage fright. I don't think anyone noticed, but he apologized with an awkward but sincere sorry, and he distracted his buddies who were teasing me by changing the subject. I can see how no one else could think of this as very significant, but at the time it was like someone took 2 tons off of my chest. I never forgot it. Valentine's Day of this year 2020, my boyfriend and I were celebrating the day with a date where we walked around the mall and enjoyed ourselves. We're passing the art gallery inside and a beautiful painting of a nude woman in silk sheets caught my eye and I went up to the window to admire it. It was incredible. It was almost like if you touched it you could feel the silk. I love art so much, so I asked him if we could take a look and he was like, yeah, for sure. We saw a lot of pretty pieces, metal sculptures, pop art, the works. Then one particular artist's section caught our eye. Robert Deber. Amazing stuff. All of his art was bases off of puns. He had a whole series of Bad Hair Day dedicated to the depiction of rabbits doing horrible things like setting houses on fire, etc. We loved it. We stood in his section for a while pointing, laughing, reading the names and just loving it. We decided that his art was too good not to bring home. Of course we couldn't afford an actual painting, so we browsed the table holding all the artist gallery books. His was $98. So we disappointedly put it down. I decided to ask the curator lady working there if there were any cheaper ones online, and she said hold on, and walked to the back where my boyfriend and I had come from and came back with the same book we were looking at and handed it to us. She winked and said Happy Valentine's Day, and I was like. And she put her finger to her lips cause her coworker was on the other side of the room, and we both just silently thanked her. We left the gallery in quite a daze. We kept trying to figure out the reason why. Was she related to the artist? Do no one ever really go in there to look at art? Anyway, my heart was so full that day. Was a great Valentine's Day, honestly. I participated in an intense drunk driving simulation at my high school, and they brought in a woman to speak about how she lost her entire family just from one drunk driver. Her son and his friends were sober and driving at night when a drunk driver crashed into their car. All of the friends escaped, but the son was stuck in the back seat while the car burst into flames. The mother was able to see her son one last time in the hospital, but was unable to touch him because it brought him too much pain and his skin would flake off. Her husband went into a deep depression, suffered a heart attack, and died, and her other son was now an alcoholic. After blaming himself for his brother's death, he claimed his brother would still be alive had he offered him a ride earlier in the night. Well, the parents of the simulation participants were invited to the assembly that this woman spoke at, so my mom was there. At the end of the assembly, all of the other students were dismissed except for the participants and their parents. My teary-eyed mom walked up to the lady and hugged her, thanking her for speaking and commended her on her bravery and strength. They got into a conversation, and the lady pointed at my mother's Tree of Life necklace, which she wore every single day for decades. The lady mentioned that she had a similar necklace but lost it sometime after her husband suffered a heart attack. Without even thinking, my mom took it off her neck and gave it to her. There is something about the exchange of a tree of life from one person to another that seemed very beautiful, especially with so many emotions behind it. To this day, it is one of the kindest, most heartfelt moments that I have witnessed.